They say two heads are better than one on this episode of Battle Guides featuring Tatsumi and Juto. Tatsumi and Juto are a positioning-based character with powerful stats as well as very interesting effects. However, that all comes at the cost of having very situational stats, having very big reliance on their positioning, as well as needing to manage Juto's life. Tatsumi and Juto's unique ability is Tidal Bond. This unique ability is quite long, but in short, it basically means that Juto has 4 life, and whenever he soaks for Tatsumi, he loses that much life. When he loses all of his life, he's removed from the board and has to be brought back by one of Tatsumi's effects. Now, depending on where Juto is, Tatsumi and Juto gain various stats. There are 4 zones in total. Zone 0 is when Juto is behind Tatsumi, and this gives Tatsumi range plus 0 to 2 and power plus 1. This is a very offensive-oriented zone, and oftentimes if you're on the offensive, you will be advancing towards your opponent, and oftentimes that leaves Juto behind Tatsumi, allowing you to gain the advantage of the range and the power. With a large amount of hit confirm and power this gives, it's one of the most powerful zones you can be in. Zone 1 is when Juto is in the same space as Tatsumi, and this zone is quite powerful because of the fact that it gives you Soak 3. Remember that when you soak something using this effect, Juto will lose the appropriate amount of life. This can be very powerful because it basically gives you effective Stun Guard 3 and basically makes it so that Tatsumi will almost always positively trade against the opponent. This one is a very powerful zone, and it will be the center of Tatsumi's playstyle, which we'll go over later on. Zone number 2 is when Juto is between Tatsumi and the nearest opponent. Now this one is a very interesting zone because it's basically a weaker version of zone number 1. It gives Tatsumi Soak 1 and Stun Guard 2. Again, when you soak, the Juto loses the appropriate amount of life. Now this is a very interesting zone because of the fact that it effectively gives you Stun Guard 3, but it's not as powerful as when Juto is on your space. This one is a very interesting zone as well, and is very crucial for one of Tatsumi's styles, but otherwise it's basically a weaker version of your zone number 1, but it's easier to take advantage of because there are way more spaces between you and the opponent than there are spaces where Tatsumi is on. So this basically means that this is the zone that Juto will usually be in if you're playing a very defensive game. So that's pretty good because it synergizes with a lot of Tatsumi's ranged attacks because most of them have no defense whatsoever. And finally, we have Zone 3, which is the space your opponent is on and all the spaces behind them. This zone is very offense-oriented as well, giving you priority plus 1. This can be very crucial in certain matchups, especially when you're up against other characters who don't have a lot of stats. But be very wary, priority plus 1 is not that big of a deal. And quite honestly, compared to all the other bonuses you get from her unique ability, this one is the weakest. So make sure that when Juto is in this zone, you have to make sure that it's very useful for you in your current matchup, because if you use it against a Schecter or maybe use it against a Cadenza, it won't matter. You might as well have a blank unique ability at that point, and that's not good. Now note as an added thing, Tatsumi can't make use of her Overdrive finishers or gain any of the bonuses I've just listed if Juto is dead or disabled, so it's very important for her playstyle for Juto to stay alive. Now this unique ability is quite powerful because all of the zone bonuses I've just listed are not set in stone. If at the start of the beat, you are on Juto's space, you have Soak 3, but at any point within the beat, if you advance and then suddenly Juto's behind you, you lose that Soak 3 and then immediately gain the range and power. This basically allows you to make powerful attacks that are both very defensive, have a lot of hit confirm, and have a lot of power to them. And this is a very crucial thing to remember when playing as or against Tatsumi and Juto. Note that just because they're in one zone now does not mean they cannot change zones in the middle of the beat. And quite honestly, this is the biggest thing you have to know when playing this character. Make use of your zones, but beyond that, know that you can change zones in the middle of the beat. And that is a very big utility buff. it's like such a big utility thing because you can easily change which bonuses you get in order to properly tailor fit your attack to any situation. Given that Tatsumi and Juto have a lot of start of beat and before activating and after activating movement effects, you can quite easily see your opponent's attack and tailor fit your attack in such a way that will let you counter whatever he's doing or at least soak up some of the damage. Doing that over a lot of beats gives Tatsumi and Juto such a huge advantage, and we can talk more about that later on after we talk about her styles. Next up is Empathic. Empathic is quite a powerful attack because it has decent stats. I would say decent, but really not because it has negative priority. But the effects on it are quite powerful. Start of beat, you may switch places with Juto if Juto is in an unoccupied space. And end of beat, your opponent basically loses as much life as Juto loses when he soaks for you. This is a very versatile attack because it basically allows you to dodge the opponent if it's bad for you or reposition Juto appropriately to gain the appropriate benefits. Say that your Juto is behind you. If the opponent dodges back, you can keep Juto there and take advantage of the range. Or if your opponent starts advancing towards you with a faster attack, simply switch with Juto to either dodge the attack or gain the appropriate amount of stun guard. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with Shot. Shot takes advantage of this very well because you can easily switch places and then whack your opponent in the face or switch out and then still hit your opponent in the face because of Shot's natural range. Now this is also quite powerful with Drive because it basically allows you to be very versatile with the way you use this attack. If you have Juto behind you, you can keep him behind you, but start of beat you can switch with him and then before activating advance again and so on and so forth. There's a lot of tricks to do with this attack, but basically it allows you to gain the appropriate amount of defense and then the appropriate amount of range when needed. So it's quite powerful if you think of it that way. Next up is Fearless, and this is what I call the Juto style. It has range -1 to 0, power +0, and priority +1. Note that passively, your attack resolves as if you were on Juto's space. Basically, you resolve the attack from Juto's position on the board. This is why it has range -1 to 0, because it allows you to hit somebody who's standing directly on Juto's space. And as an end beat effect, if you have no familiar counters, gain all of them and then put Juto on your current space. Basically, all it means is that you revive Juto onto Tatsumi's current space. It's quite a powerful attack because if you have no more ranged options left, or if your opponent is hugging Juto so much, remember, Zone 3, which is when Juto is on the opponent's space or behind the opponent, is quite one of the weakest zones you can have. And this basically punishes people who like to hug Juto because he's cuddly and make you have the worst bonuses in your entire life. So with this in mind, you can easily punish them by getting free hit confirm. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this attack with Grasp. Grasp with this attack is a very fast attack, but it also technically has a lot of range, so long as Juto is in the correct position. It can easily stun opponents who don't expect it or don't see it coming. However, aside from this, I highly recommend pairing it with Tatsumi and Juto's unique base Whirlpool. A lot of what Whirlpool does synergizes well with this, but long story short, Whirlpool allows you to pull the opponent one space closer towards Juto, and this attack resolves from where Juto's space is. Those two together give it effective range 1 to 3 from wherever Juto is. That's quite powerful. Next up is Wave. It has range +2 to 4, power -1, and priority +0. And then it has a lot of interesting effects. On hit, the opponent is pushed up to 2 spaces, and after activating, you may move Juto any number of spaces towards wherever Tatsumi would move when advancing. Basically, think of it like there's a giant tidal wave and then the opponent gets pushed and then Juto rides the tidal wave on a surfboard. That's basically what it looks like. This is a very powerful attack when it comes to hitting ranged opponents. That's easy to say, but it's also an easy way for you to reposition Juto. If for some strange reason you want the priority, this is an easy way to get it. But if Juto's behind you, you can easily use this as well to put Juto into your current space and take advantage of that Soak 3. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this attack with Grasp. Grasp benefits a lot from the range that you get on this thing, and of course, the faster that you move, the faster you can make use of that after activating. But if you want to be safer, you can always pair this attack with Strike, because it's basically like Grasp, but hits fast, hits harder, and has more stun guard. Next up is Tatsumi and Juto's best style. Siren. Siren has range +0, power -1, and priority +1. And that might not seem that good. You tell me, Marco, that's not that good. But if you look at the effects, the effect on this thing, it'll make you drool. You see, on hit, the opponent is stunned. That's it. No fancy words, no fancy conditions. You just stun whatever the heck you hit. And of course, as an added bonus, you can still reposition Juto afterwards. This attack is quite powerful and honestly one of the scariest attacks that Tatsumi and Juto will ever play against you. They can basically stun you whenever the heck they want. But the biggest thing about this is that it might not seem that good stat-wise, but when Tatsumi and Juto start using their zones on you, this attack can be tailor-fit to become one of the most improbable things to try to beat forever. Now, when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with Drive. Drive gives it the hit confirm it so desperately needs, but it also synergizes very well with Tatsumi and Juto's zones. Because it allows you to advance, you can easily advance past Juto and gain the bonus range and power, which will make this thing completely absurd. But if you don't want to use it with Drive, you can easily use it with Grasp as well. As long as Juto is behind you, Grasp can be a very fast attack that will stun nearly anyone in the game, and that's quite powerful. Next up is Riptide. It has a lot of range, not a lot of priority, but the effects are absurd. Start of beat, Zone 2, which means Juto is between you and the opponent. Attacks at range 3 or greater can't hit you. This basically allows you to be a defensive ranged powerhouse because not only does it give you a lot of range, you dodge anything so long as Juto is between you and the opponent. It's a typical marker effect, but still quite powerful. But the end of beat effect is amazing as well because it allows you to move Juto any number of spaces towards Tatsumi, even if it brings him past Tatsumi. This is basically short term for you can put Juto into whatever zone you want. Juto's between you and the opponent and you want him to be on your space or behind you? Easy. Juto's behind you but you want him to be on the opponent's space or behind the opponent or between you? Easy. It's really good because it effectively allows you to put Juto onto any space on the board. And that's absurd. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with Burst. Burst allows you to basically put Juto in between you and the opponent and then make them miss. It's that simple. But if you don't want to use it with Burst, you can also easily use it with Shot. Again, taking advantage of the effect of the start of beat effect, you can easily hit your opponent without fear of being hit back. And finally, we have Tatsumi and Juto's unique base, Whirlpool. Whirlpool is okay range, okay power, okay priority. But the effects on it, again, are really absurd. Start a beat, you can basically move the opponent towards Juto's space, but you don't move them if they're already on Juto's space. And then after activating, you can move up to 2 spaces and then move Juto up to 2 spaces. This unique base is not that good in terms of fighting power, but in terms of the ability to reposition yourselves, gold. It's amazing! It basically allows you to move anywhere onto the board and then move Juto anywhere onto the board. It's just so good when it comes to positioning. And again, as a positioning reliant character, it's very important that you get it right. Now when it comes to attack pairs, I highly recommend pairing this thing with Fearless. Fearless, again, we've gone over this. It allows you to gain decent range on Fearless and it's pretty fast. However, if that's not your thing, it easily synergizes with Empathic as well. Empathic might not be the best attack pair to pair with this because a lot of Tatsumi's other stats don't really pair with Whirlpool all that well. Because Whirlpool is mainly meant as a repositioning thing, really good on its own. But with Empathic, you can easily get the proper positioning you need to make your opponent surely miss. And you can also fudge the start of beat effects really well to gain a lot of distance from your opponent. It's pretty effective and pretty powerful to boot, so watch out for that. Tatsumi Juto's 2 Overdrive finishers are Tsunami's Collide and Guardian Sanjin. Tsunami's Collide is a very powerful game-ending Overdrive finisher with 2 to 4 range, no power, and no priority. But the thing about this attack is that on reveal, Zone 3, which means that the opponent is basically between you and Juto, this attack gains power +3 and priority +2 for each space between Tatsumi and Juto. This basically means that in its best case, this is a power 15 priority 10 attack that hits basically everything in the center of the board. Note that the passive effect states that if the opponent is adjacent to Juto, you can't hit them. This basically means that any space adjacent to Tatsumi and Juto are safe places for your opponent. This is a very powerful attack. It naturally beats most dashes and can basically one-shot anybody at that point in the game. However, the thing to remember is that your opponent can naturally counter this attack simply by bursting. If they're somewhere in the center of the board, by simply bursting, they can become immediately adjacent to Juto regardless of priorities. With this in mind, it's a very powerful attack so long as your opponent does not have the tools to counter it. I highly recommend it if you want to wreck some faces. However, it does need proper setup to work properly. So use your Riptides, your waves, and your dashes very well. However, if that's not your thing, Guardian Sanjin might be more of your thing. Guardian Sanjin is a more consistent overdrive finisher. It doesn't require a lot of setup, it has decent power and decent priority. And the thing about this is that the range of this attack is the space Juto is on and the spaces adjacent. On hit, it also stuns the opponent and allows you to freely move Juto anywhere on the board. This is a very powerful attack because it basically allows you to get some damage in, stun the opponent, and then prepare for the next turn. It's way more consistent than Tsunami's Collide, and of course, it's just a very, very consistent overdrive finisher. It's basically set up for you to win the next beat or maybe the beat after that. If you have some trouble catching up or positioning Juto, this might be the overdrive for you. Now remember that these two overdrive finishers are not exempt from your unique ability. So if you need extra stroke, stun guard, power, or priority, simply position Juto properly and you'll get those bonuses. Now let's move on to the part that everybody loves, Tatsumi and Juto advanced strategies and combos. Tatsumi and Juto advanced strategies are very interesting because they're a character that's all about, you know, changing positioning in the middle of the beat to easily get the stats that they want. Versatility and positioning are very key factors to how you should play as Tatsumi and Juto. However, instead of condensing all of it into 3 points, I'll do you one better and condense it all into one sentence. Sit on Juto. The biggest thing you can do when playing Tatsumi and Juto is to have Tatsumi sit on Juto. Now this might sound silly and it might sound absurd, but in essence this is what you want to do most of the time. A lot of Tatsumi and Juto's combo plays when it comes to their unique ability comes from taking advantage of zones 2 and 1's defensive abilities such as the Soak 3 and the Stun Guard, etc. and then transfer to another zone to take advantage of the priority, the power, or something like that. This means that the best position to be in and to allow you to have as much versatility as possible is to actually be on top of Juto. Because if you're on top of Juto, you can easily get to zone 0 simply by advancing with the drive, or you can easily get into zone 2 by retreating with a burst. This allows you so much versatility in terms of your styles and in terms of your positioning. If you need Juto to be somewhere else, a lot of your effects allow you to do that as well. And with this in mind, remember that a lot of Tatsumi and Juto's cards actually allow you to move Juto closer and closer towards Tatsumi, which means it's very natural for you to end up sitting on Juto anyway. So think about this following scenario. Say that Tatsumi and Juto are in the same space, or Tatsumi is sitting on Juto. If you drive and perform a Siren drive, for example, you can easily take advantage of the range and power from Zone 0. However, as easily as you can do that, you can easily play a Riptide burst and then burst into Zone 2 in order to get the free start of beat, dodge attacks at range 3 or greater. This is a simple scenario that basically shows how versatile being on Juto is. In fact, you can even compound it by saying that you can play an Empathic shot in the same position and still benefit from it because you can get the Soak 3 from being in Zone 1. All of these work together to make sure that Tatsumi and Juto can take advantage of the most zones at the time. And note that Zone 3 doesn't really get a highlight in this point because Zone 3 is one of the most unreliable zones you can have. simply because it's all dependent on where the opponent is. Zones 0, 1, and 2 are all dependent simply on where Juto is in relation to Tatsumi. If you want Juto to be behind you, simply advance past him. If you want to be on him, simply stay on him. If you want him to be in front, simply retreat past him. It's as simple as that. But getting zone 3 is much harder because it's in relation to your opponent. Your opponent can simply move around and negate your zone 3 advantage. So, as a guide wherein I try to teach you how to fight a multitude of characters, it's very important to focus on the things that you can handle before focusing on the things that your opponent can do. Mastering sitting on Juto will be crucial in mastering Tatsumi and Juto, so remember that. Now, let's move on to some Tatsumi and Juto combos. Number 1, Siren Drive. Siren Drive is just super good. It has a lot of priority and it has decent hit confirm and it stuns on hit. If you so happen to have Juto behind you, it has nearly full board range and deals 3 damage. Simple as that, it's effective, it's powerful, don't underestimate it. Next up is Riptide Burst. Riptide Burst is so powerful, especially if you're going the sit on Juto route, because it allows you to dodge any attack, has nearly full board range, and has decent power. It's as simple as that. Tatsumi can get so many trades without being hit back that it's not even a trade anymore. However, aside from that, I really like Empathic Shot. Empathic Shot is quite versatile. It basically allows you to stare at your opponent's face, and depending on where Juto is, you can easily take advantage of getting more stun guard or getting more range. With that in mind, it's quite powerful and quite versatile, key to all that Tatsumi and Juto are about. And that pretty much does it for this episode of Battle Guides. I am very glad to be able to teach you all about Tatsumi and Juto. Remember, Tatsumi and Juto won the World's Tournament, so that means they're really freaking good. I really like them. They're a very cool character. That's pretty much it. If you guys like the video or like the game, check the description out below for more level 99 game stuff. If you want to talk to me or any of the other BattleCon veterans, check the description out below for our forums and my email, so you can email me. If you want to give me a comment, whatever, it's in the check the comment section down below and I will respond as soon as I can. I'm sorry for the late video. I was really sick for like this past week. I'm actually still sick now, so you might notice that I'm not as energetic as I usually am, so I'm really sorry about that. I'll try to like get the next video out as soon as possible. Hopefully I'm not sick by then. Without much to say, don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indines. Thank you and good night.